Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome once again to Company of Heroes 2, this time I'm playing as the Americans. So, as you can see, continuing on our trend of just going over each of the factions one by one, and continuing my tradition of fishing for wins. Like I said, I just want to sort of fish for wins to sort of demonstrate the sort of strengths of each faction. So I'm not doing honest playthroughs here, I'm just picking out games in which I won, although the Americans did get me a lot of really cheap wins. In any event, this is going to be another win, just as a spoiler, but I am going to start showing some losses after I've gone through each of the factions, because it's going to be talking about sort of their weaknesses, maybe, and how I've been getting sort of nailed by those weaknesses, potentially. But in any event, we're starting off with our riflemen, and you've seen these before. They're the very strong unit that the Americans have. Now, I'm up against the Oberkommando West, so I very rapidly chose the armored one that's on free rotation. I believe that's the free rotation one. But it gives me access to the WC-51 military truck right off the bat. And you use this to counter the Kubelwagen, which is this sort of weird 240 zero-fuel wagon with a machine gun on top of it that suppresses people very, very well. Used in conjunction with these Sturm Pioneers, they're very, very good at tearing apart infantry. Now, the nice thing about the WC-51 is that it's a doctrine ability, so you don't have to wait for it to build. So if it were here, for instance, I would have to get out 2 rifleman squads, then I'd have to wait for this thing to build. As it is, this thing came out onto the field exactly as I needed it, which is right basically after this rifleman squad was built. In any event, I've just got my rear echelon troops trying to back cap as much as possible. I don't really want to put them into a fight because they're terrible at it, but they are going to be a unit that's there. Now here we can see the Kubelwagen and Sturm Pioneers versus riflemen and a WC-51 and another unit of riflemen. So this is going to definitely be in my favor. I deal a lot more damage and my half-track is a lot more durable, so that Kubelwagen gets blown up very easily, and he didn't move these forward aggressively enough. Sturm Pioneers are very good at very close range, but even then, they probably would have gotten pretty badly chewed up. My WC-51 does have to retreat and repair itself. Americans can just sort of have their crew hop out and automatically repair their own vehicles, but over here I've got my riflemen all together, and they're going to try and keep these points in our control. Over here I had to flee. These Volksgrenadiers can definitely beat a rear echelon troop. Actually, I haven't encountered them yet. I'm going to encounter them fairly soon, but regardless, the rear echelon troops can't beat anything in the Oberkommando faction, so they're just basically there because you get them for free at the start of the game. I'm not going to build any more, and I don't really care to. In any event, we're going for that sort of same strategy as we do. My opponent does something I don't particularly agree with, in that he gets his battle group headquarters very early. I think that he really should have delayed that a lot longer. But it was his choice, and it's what he went with. Here, some Sturm Pioneers walk up really too close to riflemen. Now, they can move in and assault these sort of units very effectively, but on the other hand, I mean, they are very fragile for assault troops, which is sort of their weakness. So if they can't get in close without taking minimal fire, sometimes they get shot up before they can open fire at close range. Now, this one I knew was here because he captured it, and he hadn't moved out in either direction, so I am able to sort of run in, get some shots at him, and I'm hoping to sort of pincer him off a little bit, sort of hoping to get my truck in there, run over the dead body of my comrade, but he ends up sort of retreating in a very effective route, so he gets out of that perfectly fine. So, at this point in time, we're looking at really, really dominant map control. There's not a whole lot more I could ask for as far as that goes, and that, again, is going to be providing us resources. Now, the Overcommando get less resources from capture points, or something like that. I can't really remember what the problem is, but in any event, I'm getting a lot more resources right now, both munitions and fuel. I do barely notice that he's got the Rocket and Warfare 43 over here. I'm just outside its reach with this 50 cal. Unfortunately, it does manage to get that shot, but I'm still going to manage to get out of there just fine, so it's not too bad a situation. Over here, I've captured everything, basically. I've got some infantry loitering around, and I've got some more over here. I need to get this ambulance out so that I can start doing forward field sort of stuff, and so that I can heal my wounded troops here, since I've got some injured riflemen in this group. I should be reinforcing the squad, but I'm kind of paying attention to other things, although honestly there's not much I should be paying attention to that's all that important. In any event, the ambulance, it's basically a mobile healing wagon, as you would expect it to be. It works the same as those medics that the Soviets can get, but you can move it around wherever you want, which makes it much more versatile and much more potent. You can have more than one if you want. You can have one back at your base, which is a common place for that. And you can do a variety of other things. The other thing I've bought is a lieutenant. Lieutenants are bought from this platoon command outpost, and it's actually part of your tech path, but whenever you tech up and create one of these tech units, you actually gain a unit from the process. So it's not just tiering up, it's also gaining access to this combat unit. These particular guys have a Browning automatic rifle. They're quite tough in combat, they're quite good. I'm not using them properly because I'm busy microing this fight here a little bit here, trying to wipe out this squad, because I would really love to just completely kill them. And I think that I actually let him get away because he gets past all those other guys, which stopped me from pursuing. I'm forced to retreat a little bit past these Sturm Pioneers, and the Sturm Pioneers are quite scary, but I've got 3 riflemen now, so I'm going to be able to move back in. I'm afraid to move in with my 50 cal because I do know that my opponent has this Roxton Warfare, which could very easily kill it. So we're basically still dominating the map here, but I can't really push forward that easily. In this sort of long-range firefight, though, I'm definitely going to beat him, so he has to back off before I do. And we've kind of gotten our truck here since we've decided, okay, maybe we can take out the Roxton Werfer. I did know that the headquarters was there. I think I caught a glimpse of it when I pushed up this way, but I didn't really think to do anything about that. I don't know that there's anything I can do about it just yet. I need tanks to do something about it, really. Especially this close to his headquarters, I mean, it's not going to go down easily, so we're forced to move our troops over here, just wait it out a little bit. Now, this is going to be something that is going to be quite nice about the ambulance, is that I can actually move it up over here and start healing these wounded troops without having to run them all the way back to base as I would with the Soviets. This is a very, very good ability. I think I do it just as after I finish healing these rear echelon troops. I poked my head out here just to see what's going on, and I managed to almost murder the Sturm squad, but it's a little bit too thick over there for me to continue advancing, especially with this MG over there. Not a pretty place to continue advancing, so I retreat back. I've still got all my men, and there are some who are quite wounded, so I'm going to pull back a little bit further just in case he counterattacks, but I'm bringing up the ambulance, and that's going to be a big strength. But you can see how I'm taking over the map very early. He had to get some anti-tank. Oberkommando doesn't get very early anti-tank weaponry. He has to have munitions to get the Panzer Schreck on these Volksgrenadiers, because they don't have natural Panzerfausts. None of the units that he's actually got here have Panzerfausts. So over here, for example, he's got this unit of Volksgrenadiers who have got Panzerfaust as an upgrade. That costs 90 munitions for one Panzerfaust. Or Panzer Schreck, sorry. If they had the Panzerfausts, they'd be a lot more effective early game against this kind of truck. And against the standard Germans, this truck doesn't really do very much. It basically just gets wiped out immediately by someone with a Panzerfaust, and once its engine's disabled, it's pretty easy meat for anyone with guns, because it can't suppress and it moves very slowly once it's been injured like that. Anyway, over here I've got a Major. This is another sort of command unit. It's from the battalion command post. It lets me access the heavier armor here, so the first one I'll get is the M8A1 howitzer motor carriage. I don't actually buy that. There's also the Jackson Tank Destroyer. When I'm ahead like this, I don't buy the Jackson Tank Destroyers because I'm hoping that my opponent will not be able to get any armor. So I'm going for the M4A3 Sherman medium tank, which is really good against infantry.
Got a rifle squad waiting for orders.
The last building that I don't end up building in this particular one is the active company command post, sorry, which has the captain, I think? Yeah, captain. And it gives you access to some special weaponry here and the M5A1 Stuart. The problem is, in my opinion, the company captain is a little bit too expensive compared to the Major, because the Major, not much more expensive in terms of gas, but he provides you with that much, much heavier hit of armor. Now, if you are behind, though, and you need to hold out and you need to defend, the company captain is really quite good because it gives you access to the 57mm anti-tank gun, which is sometimes required to survive. Now, this guy comes up over here. I'm going to try and take out this machine gun. To do that, I actually have to dance around because machine guns can actually kill a light thing here. And he's also running in with these Volksgrens who have got that Panzer Schreck, so I kind of am going to be forced to drive it away, and I think they get me with the missile here. With a rocket, but
for possible blizzard conditions.
I'm just running the hell away with that because I know that it would get beaten. My infantry, on the other hand, is responding to this. I don't want him to start capturing my fuel point in particular, so I do need to keep this area clear for myself. I am going to botch this attack just a little bit, though, and he's going to manage to capture quite a lot of ground based on it, so things happen like that. Especially bad because the blizzard is happening right now, but I am getting my first Sherman out of the gates, and my opponent is nowhere near his first piece of armor, so we're doing pretty well in those regards. Our opponent can't actually even get armor right now because he needs to turn this into a company whatever. I don't remember the names of those particular buildings. This one is the... God. It's whatever this little icon is. I forget what the... It's the flak... the Schwerer Panzer headquarters, right. But that's how they get their heavy armor, and it takes them quite a while to get it. Over here, that machine gun pins down my units very effectively, stops me from advancing up there, and I'm still ahead in this battle, but I'm very temporarily forced back. I've still got my 50 cal. I don't know why I do this. I just sort of run it up here, and it gets immediately destroyed, so that's just the way things are. It's not very good. However, I have got my ambulance, and I didn't have to retreat my units. I just had to move backwards, so that means that I'm going to get my troops healed up back to full. No problem. It's not going to cost very much time or effort. I think I just wanted to see if my opponent had moved these guys away yet, or what was going on as far as that goes. Still got the Sherman on the field. It's going to push its way up there. It's going to switch to explosive ammunition. High explosive is really good against infantry. In fact, it's better than like shooting mortars at infantry in a lot of situations. So it's going to be very good at defeating what my opponent has so far. Got some guys with bazookas over here. I am getting a lot of income though, but my opponent really should be getting more infantry. I mean, he's got thousands of manpower. It's just he really wants some armor of some sort. I don't think he believes he can do anything with his manpower that he's got right now, especially because he doesn't have access to any anti-tank weaponry really other than the Raketenwerfer. The Raketenwerfer is not really the best thing because he's also up against huge balls of infantry. It's just that I got one tank now. So you can see that this Sherman is just blowing people apart. They didn't even get shot yet, but this is a really effective tank. This is going to give me the momentum I need to re-swing this entire sector and continue pushing my opponent back. The M4A3 Sherman medium tank is a tank that I think is sort of based around keeping ahead of an opponent that's already down. It's basically kicking the dog, because it won't beat an opponent that is sort of on par with you. An M4A3 Sherman is one of those really, really weak tanks. And it's basically going to get demolished by any sort of anti-tank weaponry if it gets focus fired a little bit. But if you're ahead and your opponent doesn't have an opportunity to get like a Panzer IV, it's really, really good at killing infantry, even if they've got maybe a Panzer Schreck. So it does make for a useful tank when you're already ahead. It's just that it falls off so hard when you're behind. And there aren't any alternatives as far as tanks go for me. So the weather finally lifting, I'm getting another Sherman because I've got the resources for it, and I'm also starting to build these fuel territory caches, so my opponent will be even further behind. At this point in time, he really does need to get his Panzer outposts, whatever. And here he goes, Schwerer Panzer headquarters. He's hoping that he'll be able to use this to sort of swing the battle in his favor with some sort of last-minute push or some sort, but he's got very little gas after building that because it does cost quite a lot of gas to produce it. I'm content to just sort of move in and take these points from him so that I'm even further ahead in resource generation, and he's denied those. And that's what, again, is really effective in this game, is denying your opponent these resources and these assets that let them build higher-tech units. Bringing in recon overflight, I just want to see what my opponent is doing, what he's up to. You can see that he's actually got quite a bit of anti-tank being developed now with these Volksgrens and with the, what are these called? Raketenwerfers. He also manages to like shoot tons of flak at my plane, but he manages to barely get out of there alive, so that's fine. Flak honestly doesn't seem to do that much in this game. Right, so another tank. And this is basically going to be the game. I've got control of everything. He's forced to move in there. I didn't expect him to come in with this much infantry. I thought that he was much further down, but he comes in with quite an impressive attack, and I'm actually forced to withdraw those troops to keep them alive. However, I still have a fairly large ball of infantry. I've got 2 Shermans, both of them are loaded with high explosive rounds, which means that they're going to do a real number on this infantry, and they can even take out a rocket warfare pretty quickly. So this is one of those situations where my opponent just doesn't have the resources he needs to stop me, even though he's pushed back some of my troops. I don't know how he killed 3 of the men from that squad. I was really perplexed by that. However, he does get some good hits on the M4A3. I knew, however, that he didn't have 4. Like, I saw the icons. Standard German army would have had 4 of the Panzerschrecks at this point in time. These guys only have 2, since each unit only gets 1. And I'm able to sort of move in and start demolishing his stuff here. The riflemen are going to be able to move in very effectively, start taking out the Roxenwerfers. And that one just gets owned really badly. He could have fled it, but he kind of needed his stuff. I grabbed that Panzerschreck as well, which is going to put him even further behind. And at this point in time, there's not much my opponent can do. He's basically out of the game. I retreat back these units. I should have only retreated back 1, but I accidentally had them boxed, which is unfortunate. However, I am going to be able to destroy it pretty hard with this tank, so my opponent does surrender at that point in time. So yeah, that's the power of the Americans. They're just very, very dominant early game, and if you can keep your opponent, you can kick him when he's down, it's very hard for them to recover. And if they do, though, they're late game. Like, this is the best I'm going to get as far as tanks get with this particular build. Anyway, let's take a look at the American forces against the standard German army. Okay, welcome back. This one's going to be a match against the standard Germans. Now, this particular player does something different, and I'm forced to react accordingly to it. I said that the trucks that I've got here, the WC-51 military trucks, are not particularly good against standard Germans. That's because they've got those riflemen who can just sort of Panzerfaust them. In this particular case, however, my opponent had a doctrine that I was gambling that he was going to take, and I was right. He's got these assault grenadiers, which don't have any anti-tank abilities in particular. So these guys, unlike the Panzer Grenadiers, are not very good at taking out vehicles, but they can demolish units of infantry. They're probably one of those early game assault units that just tear straight through them. And since they're a doctrine unit, you can just start with them. They're not too expensive. They cost the same as my riflemen, but they will tear apart a rifleman squad if they manage to get into close range against them. So they're running in forward. They're going to try and capture the points and try and engage with my units from very close range. So in this particular case, I kind of expected that my opponent was going to pick this doctrine of his because it counters American forces to a certain extent. If I'm trying to fight him, he can just sort of create balls of these assault grenadiers, and there's not a whole lot that I can do to counter it, unless I've got doctrine tanks, or doctrine trucks. So in this particular case, that's what I've managed to get. However, it is a more expensive unit than the Panzer Grenadiers, and it is going to cost him when I roll in with this truck. He should have considered that this was a possibility for me, but maybe he was banking on the fact that it's not an effective doctrine against him, so that could have been what he was doing. In any event, we're just both capping things. I've got riflemen here. They're going to easily tear through those pioneer squads. I've got them actually boxed in by 2 units of riflemen and my trucks, so those guys, I mean, they get in this building for a little bit, but they're already down to 2 guys, and when they get out of the building, they're going to be pretty much dead, so yeah, these guys did not have a fun time in that house there. So, we've managed to continue capturing some stuff. These guys are actually moving back to capture a point that I hadn't gotten to already, and I'm able to take the middle very decisively. This house area is very, very difficult to fight over. It's kind of nonsense. I should probably not be focusing on it. But in any event, he's got assault grenadiers over there. And he's got this heavy machine gun over here, so the combination of those is going to be able to blunt anything that I throw at him. However, I am going to be able to push these guys back on virtue of having that truck there. These riflemen from this distance are much, much better than those assault grenadiers, so this particular fight does favor me quite nicely. Either way, however, my opponent's still getting assault grenadiers. Those guys not doing too well so far, though. They haven't really proven themselves worth their cost. 280, they're the same cost as my rifleman. I think he gets another unit even after this, but they haven't really accomplished much.
Our opponents are seizing a sector.
So let's switch back over to me here. I, as you can see, have not really done all that much. I'm just basically building riflemen. I've got that one truck, and I'm going to try and keep it at just that one truck for as long as I possibly can. I'm sending around a couple of units over here. I'm going to end up encountering this machine gun, and I think it takes out a bunch of guys, but I think I do end up retreating. However, I still have plenty of places to try and cap. I remember what happens here. I think I lose my truck against it. Like, those machine guns, I tried to get around behind it, but sometimes that machine gun is just too well placed and you can't get behind it, and it just ends up destroying your trucks, because machine guns can actually destroy trucks. I should have actually continued on focused on these Panzer Grenadiers that I knew were sort of milling around here, but he has got another HMG over on that side. I'm continuing on with my spam of riflemen, and this is a spam. The American forces are just very, very good at doing that sort of thing. Yeah, so he blew up my truck there with this HMG. HMGs can do a lot of damage to light vehicles, so he's got a very commanding view of this point. Now, I'm not worried about these points. I'm more concerned about winning the game through better units, so it doesn't matter to me that I'm not getting these victory points. I don't know why I sent more troops over here. I sent this guy behind the wall, though, and they're going to be able to pull it out against this machine gun, and they're actually going to be able to pick them off. I should have done it that way the first time, but yeah, it's not something that's necessarily easy to get the angle on, especially since you don't know necessarily if he's repositioned or what if he's done. So, my opponent's continuing on with his things. I'm forced to retreat back here because there's no way I'm going to actually be able to beat these guys. I do try to volley fire them, because if I can pin them down, I'll be able to actually kill these guys, but these guys are suppressed, and he's going to bring in some reinforcements in a little bit. Or rather, actually, I think my suppression volley fire runs out of duration. It's got like a 20-second duration or something like that. Yeah, so these guys get back up and start running in, and my guys are just starting to get owned. They might even get killed. Not a very useful unit to those rear echelon troops. They just can't do anything right. Still, I've got more troops coming in. I've got my lieutenant coming in. The combination of the rifleman and the lieutenant is going to easily be able to wipe out these weakened assault grenadiers. I mean, assault grenadiers are good, but when they're at half health or something like that, they can't take out two units, especially when one of them has a bar. In this particular game, you might notice that I've dismounted my medics. This way I don't have to pay attention to them. They just sort of sit beside the ambulance, and they'll passively heal everybody like medics do. Bazookas, you can actually put 2 on a single unit, and I tend to do that so that I've got dedicated anti-tank squads, as opposed to ones that are sort of mixed weaponry, but in this particular case, that's just 1 so far. These units forced back because my opponent's got too much in that region. He's got an assault engineer squad with the flamethrower now, and I can't really contest this sort of range. I am going to come in with 2 units, see if I can take them out that way. However, he has got a mortar that's going to start raining down on us. Combination of mortar and flamethrower is going to be difficult to deal with, but I do manage to just barely kill it. I was just wiggling my units back and forth a little bit to try and stop him from landing a good mortar shot. The scout flak is just such bullshit. Such a good unit, but I've still got units running away. I'm trying to pick up this weapon here, but I can't get at it because it's under this capture point, so that's really bad. But despite that, I've still managed to keep control over most of the map. My opponent is going to start taking some of it, but at this point in time, I'm at my major. I've got... I think I have a major. Interesting, maybe I don't. But I've still got quite a lot of stuff. I've got troops who have got the ability to take out this thing. Yeah, I have got a major. There he is. Why is he out there? I usually keep my major back in base. Theoretically, you can call in rapid barrage assault artillery, but I tend not to really use that ability all that much because I want to keep him safe because he's such an expensive unit. I don't really have to worry about it, though, I suppose. In any event, I'm bringing in a Stuart, if I recall. Waiting for a Stuart. It's going to be a little bit longer. Here, MG, it's just getting overrun. I've got too much infantry, so he's forced back here again. He's still got mortar fire raining down on me a little bit. I don't know where some of this is coming from, but it's not really that worrisome to me. Especially now that he's had to retreat it back. I'm in a commanding position in this area. I've still got most of the map. I'm still pulling in way more resources than my opponent, so I'm not in a bad position here, and I've got my armor coming out. He's just camping these friggin' machine guns in around here, because he really wants to stop me from getting anything around there. Very obnoxious, very effective. Especially since I don't really have very good machine guns. I think I don't even get machine guns without a doctrine. Oh no, I get the M2HB. Either way, we've got the flak scout car again. Now, this was a mistake getting that. Like, seriously a mistake. At this point in time, I've got a bunch of bazookas, which means that a scout car is just going to run up to my units and get killed. They aren't going to be able to do anything, so light vehicles against the Americans mid-game stop mattering, because all of my units basically are going to have anti-tank capability. I brought in my tank. I'm getting the 50 cal. I'm just going to camp here and destroy these buildings, basically, because I want to get rid of these machine guns. The machine guns obviously aren't going to do anything to a heavy tank like this, so their bullets are just rattling off here, and I'm just destroying these units for free. He does bring in a Stug, but he does lose a lot of health on it to my infantry, so I managed to get away, and I managed to blow up a Stug with infantry. That is going to be the game here, so as you can see, the American faction is really all about that early game pressure, and they're very, very good at it. Their units are very strong, they're very versatile, and they can transition into the mid-game very effectively once your opponent starts putting out heavier armor, or scout cars, or what have you. So they're very, very good at moving from the early game, dominating it, really strong units, really powerful riflemen. These trucks are also very good at shutting down assault-type troops. Once they've done that, they can get into the mid-game and they can deny your opponent a counterattack. A lot of times, if your opponent was against, say, the Russians, it's possible for him to get that flak scout wagon and keep out of hand grenade range. But with the Americans, they've got the bazookas at that point in time, and that's just going to stop them from doing anything about it. So I think the Americans right now are a little bit stronger than the Soviets. I think that they're probably actually the strongest faction right now in 1 versus 1, but they have obvious deficiencies in, say, 2v2 or 4v4 or something like that, because you're more guaranteed to end up in that late game, and you're seeing people tech up much more rapidly in those multiple player games. So Americans, I think, are going to be a little bit weird, since 1 versus 1 is... I don't even know if 1 versus 1 is really the preferred way of playing this game. I think a lot of people like having a team. Personally, I think having a team is a lot more fun in certain respects, but it's just such a strong faction right now. And I'm hoping that if they decide to add in, say, Great Britain or what have you, or other factions, maybe even the Pacific Theater, they could add the Pacific American Marines, and they could add the Japanese, for example. I'm worried that if they start doing that, they might continue on adding in more versatile or more powerful factions, or especially with the Japanese, they would be very difficult to balance because they don't have tanks, really. Their heaviest tank is much lighter than a Sherman. So they were not a faction that could field late-game armor if you were playing as them. I think it's like the Chiha or something like that. Light tank is equivalent more to the M5A1 Stuart, and I think even the M5A1 Stuart would beat that. So if they start adding in factions like that, it might even unbalance it further by adding someone who's even better than the Americans' early game to make up for their lack of late game, which really could ruin the game and make it just not a fun game to play. But we'll have to see what they end up doing, how they go about this. Until then, I hope you found this enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.